I've been skiing for as long as I could walk. My parents used to ski competitively, that's actually how they met. Because of that, skiing wasn't just a hobby in my family, it was a tradition, a rite of passage. By the time I was 21, I thought I had seen everything on the slopes. The cold mornings, the long lift rides, the silent forests blanketed in snow, none of it felt new anymore. Yet that winter, in Vermont, something happened that would forever burn itself into my memory. It was supposed to be just another trip. Me, Jaden, Rylan, and Amir. For friends looking for adrenaline before the semester picked up again. Rylan drove, Jaden cracked jokes, Amir flirted with every waitress we saw, and I just wanted to breathe in the mountain air one more time. The resort was massive, 7 ski lifts, endless trails twisting like white veins across the peaks. For 2 days we darted down black diamonds, laughing, racing, drinking little fireball shooters that kept the cold at bay. It was dangerous fun, but it was our kind of fun. That second evening, as the lifts were about to close, we gathered at the top, debating which run would be our last. The snow had turned to silver under the fading sky. My legs ached, but I knew I would miss the mountain the second we left. That's when they appeared. 2 girls. No helmets. One blonde, one brunette. Beautiful in a way that made us all stop talking for a second. They introduced themselves, Taylor and Devin. Their voices were casual, friendly, almost too confident for strangers. They said they were bored, that the slopes were filled with old tourists. We were young, their age. Easy prey for flattery. Rylan grinned like he'd just won the lottery. Amir turned his charm up instantly. I remember thinking it was strange. The way they approached us out of nowhere. The way their eyes lingered too long. But the mountain air and the fireball buzz dulled my suspicion. Small talk turned to laughter. Devin asked Amir about his skis, expensive ones he'd brought instead of renting. Taylor teased us about the alcohol, and before we knew it, Devin was pulling out an unmarked bottle from her pack. She smirked, called us cowards for sticking to something as tame as fireball. We drank. Not much, just enough to feel the burn. Rylan, of course, had more than he could handle. I sipped lightly, pretending. A voice in the back of my mind whispered that something was wrong. Why would 2 stunning girls be wasting their time with us, hidden behind helmets and goggles? Then Devin mentioned a trail. Have you guys ever tried Devil's Forest? She asked. The name alone made me pause. I knew this mountain's map pretty well, and nothing by that name rang a bell. But she explained, it was a glade trail, hidden, rarely open, weaving through trees where no groomed slope existed. For a moment, curiosity beat caution. Skiing through untouched woods was exactly the kind of thrill we craved. Amir and Rylan were sold instantly. Jaden and I, not so much. Still, we followed. They led us off the main path, into a quieter part of the mountain. The air felt heavier there. No sound but our boots crunching snow. No skiers, no laughter, just silence and the wind sneaking through the branches. We unclipped our skis and started walking uphill. That in itself was odd, no trail I'd ever known started with a climb. Jaden shot me a look, the kind of look that said this isn't right. I nodded, but said nothing. Ahead, Rylan had his arm around Devin, his laugh echoing strangely in the empty forest. Amir stayed close to Taylor, throwing lines that made her giggle. Too perfect. Too rehearsed. When the slope finally appeared, steep and shadowed by trees, I felt a shiver crawl down my spine. The air smelled different, damp, almost metallic. Don't worry, Taylor said, smiling, it leads right back to the lifts. But as the light dimmed, and the first crunch of skis cut into the untouched snow, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were stepping into something designed not for adventure, but for a trap. The forest swallowed us whole. Tall pines bent over the narrow path, their branches heavy with snow. The only sounds were our skis scraping ice and the occasional nervous laugh. At first, it almost felt magical. The untouched snow glittered under the fading light, every breath clouding in the freezing air. But the deeper we went, the more unnatural it felt. No markers, no signs, no sound of other skiers anywhere. Just us, and them. Jaden whispered to me, "It doesn't make sense. Trails don't start like this." He was right. I wanted to turn back, but Rylan was too far ahead, Devon on his arm, her smile never fading. Then Devon pulled out the bottle again. "Before we continue," she said softly, "you boys need a little more courage." Amir laughed, snatched the bottle, and took a deep swig. Rylan followed. Their cheeks flushed red against the white snow. When the bottle reached Jaden, he hesitated. "I'm good," he muttered. For a split second, Devon's face twisted into something dark, something cold. Her eyes narrowed, her lips curled into a silent snarl, then just as quickly, she smiled again, as if I'd imagined it. I pretended to drink when the bottle came to me, letting the liquid brush my lips but never swallowing. My gut screamed at me, something is wrong. The girls didn't drink. Not once. Not a single drop. We continued down the slope. The trees closed in, shadows stretching long and sharp. The air grew heavier, and I could almost feel the weight of unseen eyes pressing on us. Then, the first collapse. Rylan's laughter cut short. His skis tangled, and he fell back into the snow, motionless. At first, I thought he'd lost his balance, but when I rushed over, his body was limp. Breathing, but unconscious. The girls giggled. "Lightweight," Taylor said mockingly. Before I could process it, Amir dropped too, his body folding like a puppet with its strings cut. Panic erupted in my chest. "What the hell did you give them?" I screamed. Devon shrugged. "Nothing serious. Just relax." Her tone was calm, rehearsed. Too calm. Jaden stepped forward, fists clenched. "Answer him," he barked. But before he could take another step, his knees buckled. He collapsed into the snow beside the others. I was the only one left. My heart pounded so violently I thought it might burst. The two girls turned toward me in unison. Their smiles had vanished now, their eyes empty, predatory. They didn't say a word. They just waited. My head spun, the edges of my vision darkening. But I hadn't swallowed. I forced myself to stay awake, to fight the dizziness. I dropped to the snow, pretending to lose strength, hoping they'd believe I was out too. They whispered to each other, unaware that I was listening. "He didn't drink enough," Taylor hissed. "Then leave him." "We have what we need," Devon replied. They unstrapped Rylan and Amir's skis, lifting them with surprising strength. I lay frozen, my breaths shallow, as they trudged deeper into the woods with stolen gear, and something far darker in their plans. When they vanished among the trees, I finally staggered to my feet. My legs trembled, but adrenaline pushed me forward. I followed their tracks in the snow, every step a battle between fear and fury. That's when I saw it. The clearing. A road cutting through the forest. And parked at the edge, a van. The sliding door creaked open. 4 men stepped out. Big, broad, dressed in dark coats. Their faces were hidden in shadow, but their presence alone sent ice into my veins. The girls waved, signaling to them. One of the men pointed straight at me. My chest tightened. They know I'm awake. I stumbled backward, almost tripping over my own skis. The men started shouting, but their voices blurred under the roar of my heartbeat. I ran. Branches whipped against my face, snow sank beneath my boots. I followed my own tracks back through the woods, praying, begging, that I'd find my friends before those men did. The forest felt endless, each tree like a wall, each shadow like a figure waiting to pounce. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I kept moving. Finally, I found them. Jaden, Amir, Rylan, still unconscious, sprawled in the snow. I fell to my knees, shaking Jaden, slapping snow into his face. "Wake up. Please, wake up." After what felt like eternity, his eyes fluttered open. Confusion clouded his gaze as I poured out what had happened, the van, the men, the danger closing in. We tried waking Amir and Rylan, but their bodies were still heavy, poisoned by whatever had been in that bottle. We couldn't carry them far. All we could do was wait, and pray the strangers wouldn't find us. Every crunch in the snow made my blood run cold. Every whisper of wind sounded like footsteps. But they never came. Not that night. We sat there for an hour, shivering, watching over our friends. When they finally stirred, groggy and weak, we told them everything. Their faces drained of color. Not just from fear, but from the realization of what could have happened. Because robbery didn't explain it. Why lure us so far? Why bring backup in a van? Why poison us in the middle of a deserted forest? None of it made sense. And maybe that was the most terrifying part of all. By the time Amir and Rylan fully regained their strength, night had already fallen. The mountain that had once felt alive with laughter and speed now loomed over us like a silent predator. Every lift was closed, every light in the distance dim. The walk back was hell. Dragging half-conscious friends through knee-deep snow, retracing trails with nothing but moonlight guiding us, it felt endless. Every crack of ice behind us made us think those men, or those girls, were still following. When we finally reached the base, the resort staff looked horrified as we told them what had happened. Police were called. Reports were written. Promises were made. But deep down, I knew, people like that don't just vanish. Days later, it even made local news. Yet no arrests, no updates, no closure. Those faces, the girls who smiled while poisoning us, the men stepping out of the van, still haunt me. To this day, I don't know if we were just meant to be robbed, or if something far worse was planned. All I know is, had I swallowed that drink, I wouldn't be here telling this story. The mountain still stands. The snow still falls. And sometimes, when I see an untouched trail stretching into the forest, I hear their voices again, laughing, taunting, waiting. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Into open fields, a lonely box of timber and memory. In winter the fields turned to one unbroken sheet, a white that swallowed fences, roads, and the last warm color from the sky. My father called the place our time capsule. Cracks spidered through the boards. Paint curled like old paper. The roof wore patches like tired bandages. But it was ours, and it held our winters the way a jar holds breath. When I was 8 and my brother Josh was 11, blizzards meant freedom. School disappeared. The air turned glassy and thin. Our parents vanished into the slopes with their skis and cheerful routines, and the world outside our door became a silent arena built only for us. We had a game, Snow Jewel. We'd each raise a little fort of walls, hide a single giant snowball behind them, and then try to steal the other jewel without getting caught. Simple rules, simple joy. That afternoon, the storm moved like a living thing. Wind slid along the pines in low chords. Flakes stung the skin beneath my scarf. Josh jogged down the hill toward the neighbor's property, the big place that sat empty most winters, and raised his whistle in a salute. He'd blow it when his fort was set. I stayed at our base, counting the seconds, watching the road blur and reappear between gusts. 5 minutes stretched. 10. The woods made old, aching sounds, branches tapped, trunks creaked, and somewhere far off a plow moaned and then faded. I pictured Josh piling snow in fast, neat stacks, then standing with a grin and his whistle, but the sound never came. Maybe the wind swallowed it, I told myself. Maybe he forgot. The forest path was a dark ribbon I didn't trust, so I chose the road, where the snow lay deep but honest, where my boot prints would be their own lifeline back home. I trudged downhill through clean, new powder. Every step erased itself. Breath clouded my vision. When the neighbor's driveway appeared, a pale notch in the trees, I paused and listened. No whistle. Just the wind and the whispery hush of falling snow. Through bare branches I saw it, Josh's little wall, a clumsy white crescent hugging the ground. His tracks ran from the road to the fort, and then on toward the house. That made no sense. We didn't knock on doors. We didn't go inside. We played outside, always. I moved closer, weaving through the trees until the fort sat at my feet like a sleeping animal. The jewel snowball rested behind it, fat and perfect, untouched. I should have grabbed it and run. Instead I called out, "Josh." The storm swallowed his name and returned nothing. That was when I heard a voice. "Excuse me, are you looking for your brother?" A woman stood at the neighbor's front door, framed by a green storm door and a halo of drifting flakes. She was older, or the cold made her look that way, cheeks too tight, a smile too wide. She didn't blink. I remember the stillness of her eyes in all that moving snow. "We're just playing a game," I shouted, making my voice carry toward where my parents might be. "Your brother's inside," she said, and the words clamped around my chest. Inside. We weren't allowed inside. I glanced at an upstairs window and saw someone peering through fogged glass, half a face under a black beanie, a cheek pressed to the pane. Whoever it was didn't move. They only watched me. Footprints told the story. Josh's tracks, easy to recognize, led from the fort to the steps and vanished at the door. For a breath I believed it. Maybe they knew our parents. Maybe Coco. The wind carried the woman's voice again, sweet as honey left too long in the sun. "Come in, get warm." I climbed 2 steps. Instinct tugged the other way, a hand on the back of my neck. I cupped my hands and shouted with everything I had, "Josh." The name bounced off the eaves and fell into the snow. No answer. Her smile frayed. In the window, the watcher slid away. From deep in the house, a sound gathered, a slow, heavy tread, each step pausing as if to listen. The doorknob ticked, a quick metallic chatter. The moment brightened, sharp as a shard of ice, "Choose." I ran. Snow clawed my knees. The road tilted slick beneath the powder. Behind me the woman screamed something that shredded in the wind. I didn't look back until the hill lifted me and our driveway opened like a harbor. When I glanced, the window was empty, the house waited like a held breath. A whistle cut the storm. 2 notes my father used when dinner was ready. I found him and Josh at the top of the drive, both dusted white. They tried to get me inside, Josh blurted before I could speak. They said Coco. They kept smiling. I ran. Dad slid a short length of pipe from the garage and told Mom to stay with us. Then he walked down the hill with the steady pace of someone who refused to be hurried. The storm thinned. We watched until the trees took him. Minutes pooled. When he returned, snow stuck to his eyebrows, jaw set. Front doors locked. No answer. We went to another neighbor's place. They knew the owners of the big house and called them. Josh and I sat on a bench that smelled like oranges and old wool and tried not to swing our feet. Dad stood by the window with the pipe in his hand like it had become part of his arm. The call connected the way the storm did, slow, with little bursts of static. The owners weren't in town, the neighbor said. No one should have been in that house. The sentence moved through the room like a cold front. Dad's hand tightened on the pipe. Blue lights eventually painted the white road. Officers listened, took notes, and traced our path, up the hill, past the empty fort, across powder that tried to erase every answer. One found the back door unlatched. They searched and came back shaking their heads. No prints inside. No cups in the sink. No lingering heat. Just quiet and a thin draft under the thresholds. Josh and I described the woman, older, smiling too hard, eyes that didn't seem to blink. We told them about the watcher at the window, the beanie, the half-hidden face. An officer asked the same question 3 ways, as if turning it might change the truth. It didn't. We weren't invited anywhere safe. We were lured. When the lights left, the road slid into darkness, and the storm became sound again. Dad locked our doors twice. Mom ran the small rituals that wake a house: tea, extra blankets, a lamp burning in the hall. We packed a box of valuables because fear is practical when you're a parent. Then we stood at the window and watched the snow settle the way dust settles over rooms no one enters. After that day, the neighbor's property turned into a hole in the map we carried. Our games curved around it. Winter came again, and the fields went white again, but the road past that house felt thinner, like a pond the sun had almost gotten to. I still visit the old place sometimes. The roof patches have learned new tricks, the paint curls in new directions. But when the wind moves through the pines and the world goes quiet in that Colorado way, I remember the door, the window, the double tracks turning back to the woods, and the life that split in a bright instant when I chose the road. The lake looked like a great pale coin dropped into the woods, its edges rimmed with reeds and bent birches, its face glazed to a dull mirror by weeks of hard cold. We went there when the snow thickened and the town fell quiet. Kyle drove his pickup along the empty county road. Ricky and I rode in the silence that comes before a dare, watching flakes glide through the headlights like slow sparks. We weren't thrill seekers, not really. We were collectors of winter, of the eerie balance between fear and calm that only ice can hold. Past midnight, the lot by the trailhead lay unplowed, but the truck pushed through. The forest wasn't truly a forest, just scattered trees with black, bony limbs. Wind hummed through them. Our boots bit the crust, then sank, then found ice. Kyle laughed softly, a white ribbon leaving his mouth. "It's solid," he said, and pitched a stone onto the lake. It skittered and settled without a crack. We stepped out, one careful foot after the other, like crossing a drumhead. Out there the world changed. Town sounds were gone. Even our breaths seemed reluctant to be heard. Snow packed the night with a floating glow, the moon pressed it brighter, so the dark felt thinned, almost see-through. Ricky flicked a lighter for his cigarette and cupped it against the wind. The tiny flame made a room around his hands. We moved toward the blanched center, joking softly, the way people do when they want to anchor themselves to normal. 100 feet from shore, we stopped. The ice sang, a faint, whale-deep moan that meant strength, not danger, but it raised the little hairs along my wrists. I told myself we'd stay 10 minutes, take a few photos, and walk back. Then something on the far side shifted. A dark shape detached from the tree line and started for the lake. It was big and low and wrong, like a night bear or a bad thought wearing fur. We froze as surely as the water beneath us. The shape moved with a dragging patience, shouldering through drifts until it reached the edge. There it paused, swaying. A shiver whispered under the ice and ran away into the dark. Ricky whispered, "Bear," and the word felt too simple. The thing stood too upright. Its back humped like a costume thrown over a person, and something trailed behind, black and small and stubborn, pulled by a rope that drew a faint line across the snow. We sank into stillness. I counted breaths and tried to count reasons. Hunters. Pranksters. Anything ordinary. But ordinary never stares back the way that shape did. Even at distance, I felt its attention like a thumb on my cheek. It stepped onto the lake. The surface didn't crack. It came farther, testing with each heel, each toe, like it had learned caution the hard way. When it reached a patch swept by wind, it stopped. Hands emerged from the fur, human, bare at the wrists, and tugged at the head. The mask lifted. A man climbed out of the bear. My stomach went hollow. The suit lay at his feet like a shed skin. He wasn't big. He didn't need to be. Fear isn't a measure of size. He bent, picked up a rock, and kneeling, began to hammer the ice. Slow, deliberate blows. The sound traveled under us, a low metallic thud turning to a dull wet clunk as the top crust bruised. Kyle mouthed, "Go." He and Ricky eased toward shore, toes first, setting their weight like whispers. I followed, each step a negotiation. Behind us the man worked with stubborn rhythm, pausing to pull the rope and inch the bag closer. The bag bumped and pivoted like it held corners. A voice cut the night. "Hey." Not a question. A hook. It came flat across the ice, right at our backs. I didn't look. I didn't need a face to know danger. We broke into a run that tried not to look like running, breath burning, balance burning with it. Snow leaped at my shins. The shoreline seemed to pull away, a trick of panic. The lake complained, a booming groan that was old ice music, nothing more, yet it made my knees soften. Another shout, closer now, or only louder in my head. We reached the reeds. The ice groaned again and became slush around the rocks. Then snow again, then blessed dirt. We climbed the short bank and cut through the sparse trees toward the lot. The wind felt sharper here, alive with needles. In the truck, keys shook in Kyle's hand. The engine turned, coughed, caught. Headlights carved tunnels through the fall. I dared a glance back. The lake lay empty except for the suit, a dark bundled silhouette on the pail, and the man kneeling by the hole he had widened. "No way, that's trash," Ricky said, voice small and furious. "Who dresses like that to dump trash?" Kyle said nothing. His jaw worked. We rolled onto the county road, tires whispering on packed snow, and the lake went behind us like a door closing without sound. At home, the storm thinned to a hush. We locked doors we had never locked. Mom left a lamp in the hall. Kyle texted that he'd file a report if we would. Ricky typed and deleted, then sent the message I feared to say, "Call the police." We did. An officer listened, asking questions that tried to turn fear into facts. We said what we could, a man in a bear suit, a rope, a small black bag, a hole hammered in the ice. By morning, plows had shorn the lot smooth. No tracks remained. Now the lake returns in dreams. The ice sings. The bag bumps the snow. The mask lifts. And the road home is a white line I run in again, choosing it every time. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.